2023 has been an incredible year for cold cases. Agencies such as Othram have made their mark on forensics and have forever changed how we view cold cases. Number 5. On June 4th, 1981, drivers making their way down Interstate 35 in Texas noticed something lying on the side of the road. A handful of motorists passed without intervening, but finally somebody stopped to see what was happening. When they got a closer look, they realized it was the body of an adult female. She had sustained several wounds to her body, and her bra and blouse had been pulled over her head. The Texas Rangers were immediately called to the scene, and motorists watched in horror as the scene was cordoned off. The woman's body was transported to the medical examiner's office, and investigators hoped that they would be able to identify her and her attacker quickly, but that was not the case. An autopsy confirmed that she had several gunshot wounds from a .25 caliber weapon. The medical examiner's office took the woman's fingerprints and cross-referenced missing person reports, but no connections were made. Investigators were stumped and had no choice but to dub her a Jane Doe. Months after being discovered, she was buried with no name to adorn her headstone. Local authorities had been shaken by the case and vowed to uncover her name. In 2009, there was renewed hope for the 1981 Jane Doe when her DNA was taken for analysis. Finally, after decades without a name, investigators discovered the body belonged to 18-year-old Carol Joyce DeLeon. In May of 1981, Carol graduated from Thomas Edison High School, and on June 3rd, she went to a nightclub in San Antonio, Texas, never to return home. Following Carol's identification, investigators submitted fingernail scrapings obtained during the autopsy for analysis. These scrapings contained the DNA of a male suspect, but no profile was found in CODIS. Once again, investigators found themselves at a dead end and thought that Carol's case would never be solved. That was until 2020. In 2020, Texas Rangers requested that the male DNA profile be sent for genealogical testing. Once the analysis was complete, genealogists had 3 possible suspects, one of them being 68-year-old Larry West. Texas Rangers visited Larry in Converse, Texas, with Larry voluntarily submitting to a DNA swab. Larry maintained his innocence throughout the visit, but when the DNA was analyzed, the probability of selecting an unrelated person at random was 1 in 422.1 quintillion. There was no doubt that Larry West was their guy. In April of 2023, Larry was finally arrested and charged in the case of Carol DeLeon. Those who knew Larry later came forward and told investigators that he'd been unusually cruel towards women and was known to drive near Bexar County, visiting bars and looking for young women to pick up. Larry's currently being held on a bond of $125,000 and is awaiting trial in Bexar County Jail. Number 4. In July of 1987, Angela Hyatt, the daughter of Donna Sue Hayes, visited her mother's home at 708 North Elm Street in Carlsbad, California, late one evening. As Angela approached the front door, an uneasy feeling washed over her. When she stepped inside, she discovered a scene that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Inside the home lay Donna's body. She had been viciously attacked and assaulted before her attacker left her body. Angela immediately summoned the Carlsbad Police Department to the scene, who were equally shocked by the brutality on display. Investigators first began combing through Donna's personal life to see if anyone would have wanted to hurt her, but they found nothing. Donna was described as a sweet and kind young woman who was well liked by the community. From the outset, investigators had one man in mind, Alfredo Jimenez. Prior to July of 1987, Jimenez found himself serving a 72-year prison sentence for attacking 2 women in Carlsbad. On June 22, 1987, Jimenez escaped prison, and investigators feared he had struck again. Jimenez was interviewed about Donna's case, but did not take responsibility. According to reports, investigators were able to quickly rule Jimenez out based on evidence found at the crime scene. There were a few other suspects, but none of these leads panned out. As weeks faded into months, the Carlsbad Police Department raised the reward for information from $4,000 to $7,500, but nobody came forward. The Carlsbad Police Department later received information about a man who was seen with Donna the evening that she was attacked. Donna's body was discovered at around 11:40 p.m., and Donna was seen with this mysterious man at 9:20 p.m. Witnesses reported seeing Donna in the company of a man at a Circle K store on Guadalupe and Mermod Streets. The man was described as white, 6'6", 180 pounds, unshaven, and wearing a t-shirt and jeans. Donna's case would go cold for decades until the Carlsbad Police Department partnered with Othram. In early 2023, DNA evidence obtained from the crime scene was sent to Othram for analysis, and within weeks they had established a person of interest. Paperwork was filed and warrants were signed, which culminated in the exhumation of the suspect's grave. In April of 2023, Othram and the Carlsbad Police Department had a press conference identifying Donna's attacker as Michael Ruff Wigley. Wigley will never face justice for what he did, as he passed away in 1989 in a car accident. Wigley had been convicted on 2 assault charges in the early 1980s, and Wigley likely has more victims. Donna's family are angry that Wigley will never face justice, but they're happy that Donna's case is finally solved once and for all. Number 3. May 30th, 1987 started out like any other day for mother of 2 Mary Mathis Davis of Lexington, North Carolina. She awoke early, like she did every morning, to make her children breakfast and prepare them for school. Once the children were at the bus stop, Mary went to the Ace hardware store where she worked. That morning was unremarkable. Mary chatted with her coworkers and took a personal call. By noon, Mary was ready for her lunch break. She left the hardware store never to return. When an hour had passed, her colleagues became concerned. They searched the store and the surrounding area for her, but there was no sign of her. Mary's parents were notified of her disappearance, and the Lexington Police Department was soon called in to assist. Mary's parents knew she would never leave her 2 children behind and feared the worst. Later that afternoon, Mary's parents received the call that every parent dreads. The Lexington Police Department had found their daughter's body. She'd been dumped behind a Winn-Dixie supermarket at 802 East Center Street, a mere 20-minute walk from the Ace hardware store where Mary worked. In 1987, DNA technologies were in their infancy, but the Lexington Police Department had the foresight to preserve as much evidence from the scene as possible. Samples and swabs were kept refrigerated and tightly sealed, hoping that they would one day hold the answer. Mary's case quickly went cold, and Lexington police officers were assigned to new cases. Officers would flick through Mary's case file each year, but no new leads came from this. In late 2022, the Lexington Police Department, the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, and Othram collaborated on Mary's case. The North Carolina State Crime Lab analyzed evidence before it was sent to Othram for genealogical analysis. Within weeks, Othram had extracted and sequenced the male DNA profile found at the scene. Genealogists were able to track down a possible suspect, and Othram and the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigations worked together to confirm this outcome. In February of 2023, they announced that Russell Grant Wood was the person who abducted and attacked Mary on May 30th, 1987. Russell was 32 years old at the time of the offense, and according to the Lexington Police Department, Mary and Russell knew each other, but the nature of their relationship has not been fully uncovered. Russell Wood passed away in 2013, meaning he'll never face justice for what he did. Had he been alive today, he would have faced several first-degree charges that would have seen him imprisoned for the rest of his life. Number 2. On February 24th, 2000, a Racine resident was out walking their dog when they passed the property of 1132 Lake Avenue that sits near 12th Street and Lake Avenue. As they passed the property, the dog walker saw the outline of something amongst a low-hanging pine tree. At first, the dog walker thought that they were dreaming, but they awoke from the blanket of shock that had fallen over them as they got closer. They had just discovered the body of an adult female below the pine tree. The Racine Police Department was called to the scene and opened an investigation. The body was transported to the Milwaukee Medical Examiner's office for a complete autopsy. The medical examiner determined that the body belonged to 37-year-old Linda Fields, and that she had passed away due to asphyxiation. Her case was immediately ruled a homicide, and several DNA samples were obtained from her body. The medical examiner's office hoped that this DNA would quickly lead them to a suspect, but they were wrong. The male DNA profile found on Linda was submitted to local and federal databases, but failed to provide a match. Investigators had plenty of DNA evidence, but minimal other types of evidence to work with. Linda's case soon went cold, and on February 24th of each year, the anniversary of Linda's passing, officers would glance through her case file. It wasn't until 2021 that the police department reached out to the Milwaukee Crime Lab, the FBI, and Othram for assistance. Othram, in partnership with other agencies, created a family tree. After scoping through the family tree, they landed on a 66-year-old Lucas Alonso. On February 23, 2023, a day before the 23rd anniversary, a DNA swab was obtained from Lucas during a traffic stop, which was used as a comparative sample. A week later, police received the call they had hoped for. The DNA obtained from Lucas Alonso matched the DNA found on Linda Fields. Alonso was arrested and taken into custody. During questioning, Alonso told investigators that on February 23rd and 24th of 2000, he had met Linda at a bar. The two went to the property at 1132 Lake Avenue to engage in intimate acts. He also told investigators that he had choked Linda several times during their encounter, but that she was alive when he left. Lucas Alonso is awaiting trial and being held on a $1 million bond. Number 1. 29-year-old Wendy OGG was working hard to secure a better future for her 2 children. When not caring for them, Wendy attended beauty school where she flourished. Wendy was excited to get her cosmetology license and even thought about opening her own salon in the future. Wendy's family described her as thoughtful and kind, and knew that she was a dedicated mother to her 2 children. So they knew something was wrong when she failed to return home that evening. On April 24, 1987, Wendy arrived at beauty school with a beaming smile on her face. She told her coworkers that she had landed a date with a man that she had met earlier that day. Wendy's colleagues remarked that she was excited and nervous about her date, and when it was time to go home, she promised to tell them everything the next day. Wendy made it to her date at the La Paloma restaurant in Bellingham, Washington, and had a fun evening. In the early morning hours of April 25, 1987, Wendy left the bar in the company of a man named Mike Johnson. The pair hopped into Wendy's red 1972 Ford Torino with a black vinyl roof and returned to her home at 2223 H Street. Unfortunately, Wendy never made it to work that day, and her parents and the Bellingham Police Department were informed of her disappearance. When investigators arrived at Wendy's home, they found troubling signs of a struggle. Pieces of hair and pools of red were scattered across the house. DNA tests later confirmed that the evidence left behind belonged to Wendy, but where was she? Wendy's colleagues at the beauty school were interviewed, which led investigators to Mike Johnson. They quickly discovered that this was not his real name, and that his real name was Darren D. O'Neill. On May 2, 1987, Wendy's beloved red Torino was found abandoned in Eugene, Oregon, and Darren D. O'Neill's fingerprints were all over it. Darren O'Neill was charged with stealing Wendy's car, but investigators struggled to uncover enough evidence to link him to the crime scene. In 2015, investigators discovered DNA evidence that did link him to the crime scene. And in 2020, the Bellingham Police Department obtained a cheek swab that confirmed their suspicions. At the time of his arrest in October of 2022, Darren O'Neill was known to many authorities in the area and is now considered a serial killer. In May of 1987, he took the life of Robin Smith and was also charged in Oregon with kidnapping and assault. In March of 2023, 63-year-old Darren D. O'Neill pleaded not guilty, but the case is currently ongoing. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.